Forward looking, laying it off. Gaston! Hat trick!
Ariel sends it in off of Gressel. Made it to Elliott. Oh, the first to come! Julian Carranza! A spectacular finish! Philadelphia Devils lead!
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and what a shocking game. Who would have predicted Philadelphia Union would have went into Yankee Stadium and put up 5 goals against NYCFC? Yes, I know the Union have had their number the last few seasons, and we'll go over the stats here in a second, but I personally did not see the Union putting up 5 goals last night against New York City, and I'm glad the Union did. I'm glad the Union were able to break out and really just show a dominating performance. 5 different goal scorers on the night, multiple different ways that the Union scored, and last night was all about, I think, Andrew Rick. Yes, it's nice that the Union scored 5 goals, but Andrew Rick was the star of the game for me. We're going to get into his performance here in a little bit. We'll go ahead and talk about Jakob Glesnes' crucial goal-saving clearance off the line, his goal off of a set piece. We'll go ahead and talk about the Union finally, after not converting their chances against Inter Miami. They take advantage of their chances that New York City gave them last night, and they convert on 2 of those chances, and then they get 3 more goals. And the Union also, like I said, have been really, really dominant over New York City here the last 7 games, and so we'll go over those numbers here in a little bit, and then we'll wrap things up with just how good the Union have been on the road in the last 3 seasons. I think some of the numbers that I looked up, I think some of them may surprise you guys. I knew the Union were a good road team, and we've talked about that. I feel like the last couple episodes, the last month, really just queuing it up, teasing it to you guys, just how good this team is on the road. And would you guys be shocked if I told you the Union are a top 5 road team in MLS in the last 3 seasons? I don't think people would be that surprised, but maybe you guys would. So we'll go over the Union's numbers the last 3 years on the road compared to other teams in MLS. Who else is one of the better MLS road teams? And we have a lot to get to. No news. We'll just talk all New York City, Philadelphia Union. And I guess let's go ahead and talk about that starting lineup last night. We knew no Jack Elliott last night for the Union. He was suspended on yellow card accumulation. So that meant Nathan Harriel had to come in, play as a center back. We all know he's a right back. But Jim Kirchin said plenty of times in the past that when you look at the depth chart for the center backs, you have Jakob Glesnes, Jack Elliott, your 1 and 2. And then you have Nathan Harriel as your number 3, Macania's number 4, who is a natural center back, but again, hasn't featured yet with the first team since being bought by the club last summer. He's played a lot with Union too. Nathan Harriel comes into the starting lineup for the suspended Jack Elliott. Andre Blake once again could not go because of that groin injury. And then Danley John Jock also held out in this game because of an ankle injury that he suffered on international duty with Haiti. But the Union proved, hey, look, it's the next man up mentality. And we've seen that time and time again. One game that gets brought up is the Portland Timbers away game way back in March, I believe it was. The Union win that game 3-1. We see Jeremy Raffanello make a start in the attacking midfielder role. And yeah, the Union won comfortably against Portland Timbers last night, last March. And last night was a game where the Union needed to have players step up. Nathan Harriel, I think, had moments where he was good. Good 1v1 defending at times, but we saw New York City probably should have scored in the 66th minute, but Andrew Rick bails out. Nathan Harriel should have cleared that ball. We'll get into that a little bit more here specifically, but I think all in all, Nathan Harriel, he did his job, and it helps when you play against a veteran in Jakob Glesnes, who I think's been the Union's best center back here the last couple months. I don't think any of the Union center backs have been great this season. Yes, Jakob Glesnes was recovering from that groin injury and that we know that he had last season, which forced him out in the playoffs. And he was asked at multiple points this season, how are you feeling from that surgery? Do you feel like that groin injury is causing you any issues? And uh, Jacob didn't want to use that as an excuse, but the last couple months, I think we've seen Jakob Glesnes be at his best. Definitely not at the best we've seen Jakob Glesnes like in 2022 or 2023, but yeah, Jakob Glesnes has been, I think, the Union's best center back here the last 2 months. And I guess that's not saying much when you really only have him and Jack Elliott. And Damian Lowe played just a handful of appearances before he was sold to Saudi Arabia. But moving on to Danley John Jock, it's a tough loss for the Union because he played well against New York Red Bulls, and we don't have to go and revisit that game. We all know his dominant performance against the Red Bulls, and we all know the highlight reel that I made and I posted on Twitter and Instagram, and a lot of you guys retweeted that. A lot of you guys shared that video on Instagram, and yeah, I appreciate all that. We all know how great Danley was in that game, and then he goes away on international duty and gets hurt, and we see him play for about 15 minutes against Inter Miami, and Jim Curtin said after the game that most likely Danley would start this game against New York City. We find out on Tuesday that that ankle injury was really not healing the way that Danley felt comfortable playing one, and so the Union kept him out in this game. And we probably should have asked Jim Curtin after the game last night how close were Andre Blake and Danley John Jock to playing against New York City. But look, like I started off on this rant saying, people stepped up, players stepped up for the Union last night, which was crucial, and the Union needed that. And so it's good to see your depth step up when called upon. And we started last episode talking about, should the Union go out and get a new goalkeeper in the offseason to be the backup to Andre Blake? And I think nothing changes because of Andrew Rick's performance last night. I think this just helps solidify that, yes, you probably need to loan out Andrew Rick next season so we can get consistent playing time, playing at a higher level, because no, Andrew Rick's not going to be the Union's starting goalkeeper next season. But playing in MLS Next Pro is not going to help him develop, and so where do you send him? I've said this on other podcasts where, look, if you were to send Andrew Rick on loan in Europe, he's not coming back to the Union. I frankly don't think teams in Europe, maybe Lingby, maybe, with that partnership with the Union, but yeah, I don't see the Union loaning Andrew Rick out to Europe. I think USL probably makes the most sense, and we're not talking USL 1, we're talking the highest USL, the championship. So I think last night's performance by Andrew Rick helps solidify that, look, teams are going to benefit from having Andrew Rick on their roster, and the Union not going to get rid of him, but you want to develop him. And it's kind of like the Matt Freese situation, where I think Matt Freese, when he was with Union, was much farther ahead of where Andrew Rick is right now. But Andrew Rick has a high ceiling, and you're not going to help yourself playing in MLS Next Pro. You're not going to help yourself sitting on the bench. And so I think the next step's going to be loaning him to the USL Championship. And I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And so, yes, the Union should still prioritize going for a backup goalkeeper next year. Yeah, we talked a little bit about John McCarthy. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think that goalkeeper should absolutely be a priority. I mean, yes, you have Oliver Zemler, but there's a reason why Oliver Zemler isn't getting these starts in Andre Blake's absence. We've seen the issues with Oliver Zemler. We don't have to bring them up. We spent a good amount of time last episode talking about those mistakes from Oliver Zemler. And last night, a huge performance by Andrew Rick. 7 saves, most in his young career. He had his first MLS win. Again, a very, very young career, 18-year-old, first season playing with the Union. And he's played more games than I think he would have thought he would have played this season. I mean, who would have thought that Andrew Rick would have played 6 games this season in MLS? I don't think anybody saw that coming. But look, it's not been promising at times, but the New York Red Bulls game, He played well against them. He kept them to 0 goals, helped the Union keep a clean sheet and get a point when the Union faced them at Subaru Park. And I thought, yes, a little bit shaky there against Inter Miami. The second goal, we don't have to talk about that. We spent a long time talking about it last episode. Could have done better. But last night, really, really, really solidified that this guy is, for the rest of the season, Andre Blake's backup goalkeeper. It's helped solidify that this guy has serious potential. And I'm super proud to see Andrew Rick take that opportunity. He's a shy kid, like Jim Curtin said in his post game press conference. Speaking with Andrew Rick in the locker room against New York Red Bulls, yeah, I mean his answers were pretty short and simple, but we expect that. We expect that from all homegrown players, especially guys that are up here for the first time this season. We have John uh, joining us here on YouTube saying, I missed a few streams, but I'm back. Big win last night. Felt a little bad for Matt Freeze. Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting, too, because we had two homegrown goalkeepers going at each other. A current Union homegrown goalkeeper, and then the former homegrown goalkeeper in Matt Freeze. Somebody, I'm sure, if they join us here later on the stream, or somebody listening to this podcast back, somebody look up. Have the Union had two homegrown goalkeepers go against one another? Well, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I don't think we've seen two Union goalkeepers play, homegrown goalkeepers play against each other. Yes, I know we had Carlos Cornell play against Andre Blake. Yes, we don't have to talk about John McCarthy going against Andre Blake, but neither one of those guys were homegrown goalkeepers. Yes, they were former Philadelphia Union goalkeepers, but I don't think we've seen a current Union homegrown goalkeeper and a former Union homegrown goalkeeper. Hard one to say there. But yeah, Matt Freeze, I mean, he was, and he is, spoken about being one of the top 5 best goalkeepers in MLS, and I don't think his performance last night changes that conversation. Goalkeepers are going to have bad performances like Matt had last night, and New York City fans, I'm sure, would say, we're happy he got that one out of his system now, as opposed to in the playoffs, because you want to be clicking during the playoffs. You don't want to be at your max right now, and so there's things, obviously, that New York City can correct. I think man marking, they were terrible last night, and that's something that they're for sure tracking. Matt Freeze would definitely like to have a couple of those goals back. The opening goal where he gets a hand on the Ty Baribo header, he would probably want to have that one back. He spills the ball on the Ty Baribo header, and then Daniel Gazdag pokes it in the back of the net. Yeah, Matt Freeze would like to have a couple of those moments back, and the defense and midfield as a whole for New York City, just the lack of tracking last night, they would all love to have that back, but it's why you're still in the regular season. Playoffs aren't here yet, so you make those mistakes in the regular season where you can afford to make those mistakes, and you hope, if you're a New York City fan, that the team can get that out of their system, just like the Union fans. I mean, we saw the horrible run the Union were on during the summertime, and you hope that they could get all those mistakes out of their system. And yes, the Union dug themselves a pretty deep hole, and a big part of that was not having Andre Blake. We all know and we all see that this guy truly is the Union's best player. Without Andre Blake, the Union would not be a playoff team. And think about all the seasons in the past. Yes, the Union have been exciting with the front three of Daniel Gazdag, Julian Kranza, and Mikhail Ua, but at the same time, you still have Andre Blake, and Andre Blake was making 3 to 4 key saves a game. Yes, the front three are getting a lot of chances. Yes, they were scoring a lot of goals, but Andre Blake was still bailing out that defense, and that defense has been prone to mistakes this season. But the one thing you haven't had for majority of the year is Andre Blake, and Andre Blake can't bail out those mistakes. And so I think we all see that, yes, Andre Blake is the most important player for the Union, and the Union would probably not be a playoff team without him. Ty Baribo, I know, has been doing his best to try to carry this team into the playoffs. Mikhail Ua has been in fine form. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Daniel Gazlag's having another solid season. But those guys can't do it on their own. It takes a team effort, and that's exactly what we saw last night from the Union. But a big part of that was because of Andrew Rick And so Jim Curtin last night was asked about Andrew Rick's performance, and this is what Jim Curtin had to say on Andrew's night.
Yeah, look, I think we've put both of our young goalkeepers in a tough spot. I think we've only had Andre for 8 total league games this year. This was our 41st game of the season. I think he had to come out of 3 of those even. So we miss Andre, and we've been unfortunate to miss him. Sometimes it can be an overload of too much too soon, and for us to demand and expect our 2 goalies to be Andre, that's impossible. But we can expect them now because we know that's the standard that Matt has. So he's sorry, that Andrew has. So he's capable of that. That was a Freudian slip for Matt Freese. But no, that's what Andrew has in his skill set, and he made some big saves tonight when we needed them most. And again, he's going to get better and better. But he is 18, and in goalkeeping, that is about as young as it gets. He's still going to grow, still going to fill out. I think he's only 165 pounds, so he's got some a frame to fill out. Maybe even grows even height wise because he's still only 18 years old. But a big step for him. I'm happy for him. He's a quiet, shy, reserved kid, but that kind of performance will build some real confidence. And with goalkeeping, that is everything.
United, this game against New York City is definitely going to instill confidence in Andrew Rick, and the Union are hoping, I'm sure, that Andrew Blake's going to be back. But if not, this game that Andrew Rick just had, it's encouraging, and you just hope that the Union are able to get Andre Blake back at some point. You hope that Andre Blake stays healthy, and you hope that Andre Blake, has no more setbacks. But at the same time, if you do have setbacks with Andre Blake, you're going to have a goalkeeper in Andrew Rick who just had a career game. You just had his finest game of the season. And like I said, his first career win, most saves in his professional career with 7 with the Union. And you hope this is just something that they can continue to build on with him. And uh, like Jim said, I mean, he's 18 years old. That's extremely, extremely young for a goalkeeper. And this is when most goalkeepers, start to really start their development and to be thrown into the fire. I mean, Jim Curtin started off saying, so sometimes it can be an overload of too much too soon. And for us to demand and expect our 2 goalies to be Andre, that's impossible. But we can expect them now because we know that's true. That's the standard that Matt, he meant to say Andrew, is capable of. And yeah, I mean, it's a huge performance by Andrew Rick. And yeah, it's been a little bit unfortunate, and I've been harsh on Oliver Zemla this season. I know some of you guys listening have probably been harsh too on Oliver Zemla. The game against Chicago Fire, and I hate to bring that up, but it's one that still sits in my crawl. It's the Union wouldn't be where they are right now if they wouldn't have blown a 3-1 lead, and they shown fight multiple times. I mean, they went down in that game. They showed fight against FC Cincinnati, where Oliver Zemla gets chipped from more than half field by Luca Oriciano. Gives up a crappy goal to Kelsey. And a lot of mistakes from Oliver Zemla. And Jim is right. I mean, you can't expect Andre Blake to miss as many games as he has this season. And when he does, that's probably going to be a cause for concern and in trouble. And let's not forget that Oliver Zemla was playing in the USL last year, and Jim Curtin's reminded us plenty of times that USL to MLS is completely different levels. And yes, I know I started off saying that the Union should loan Andrew Rick to USL. To expect Andrew Rick to play week in, week out in MLS, I think he would sink, if I'm being honest. Yes, a couple spot starts here and there, I think he would be fine, but to rely on him to start week in, week out, no team in MLS is going to take a 18-year-old goalkeeper and Andrew Rick. And yes, I know Chicago Fire is a pretty good example of starting goalkeepers young in Gaga Salina and Chris Brady, but I don't think Andrew Rick's at the level of either one of those goalies were in their start to their career with the Fire. And so I do agree that Andrew Rick's best starting spot is USL because look, Oliver Zemler was, you can argue, the best goalkeeper last year in USL with Louisville City. And yes, his game hasn't transitioned from USL to MLS, and I don't think that was a thought process from the Union going into the season that okay, yeah, we're expecting Oliver Zemler to be the guy for a majority of this season. I don't think anybody in that organization was asking that. To fill in for Andre Blake when he's away with Jamaica during Copa America, yeah, that was the expectations. But to see Andre Blake miss games because of concussions, groin injuries, knee injuries, nobody could have expected that Oliver and Andrew Rick would have played more games this season than Andre Blake. And so I do think in the Union have a bright goalkeeper in Andrew Rick, but I think and I'm seeing the comments here, so I'm getting distracted. Jose says, and it's a delay on the stream. I don't know why. He says, "Your New York shirt, bro. Shake my head." Yeah, second time I wore this. So I wore this for people that have no reason to have an idea why I wore the shirt, but I wore it to New York Red Bulls, and I was like, dude, we're going to essentially New York, so of course you got to rep for the brand. Vince chimes in here and says, "Whoa, Rick," and another thing that I thought was pretty cool about last night's game, the commentators were talking about Pickle Rick, which Union 2, the Bridge Brigade guys, they're the ones who started the whole thing, and so to hear the commentators talking about Andrew Rick, and I think they called him at one point the Rick Wall. I'm like, nobody's ever called him that. They've called him Pickle Rick, that's for sure. That's what they mentioned the second time on the broadcast. But the Rick Wall, yeah, nobody has said that. Kyle chimes in and a little shot at Jose says, "I love the shirt." Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at the episode title, which actually you guys haven't seen that on YouTube because I haven't uploaded the picture yet. But yeah, name the in the episode. Actually, you guys would have seen the episode title on YouTube, just not the picture. I named the episode "Andrew Rick shines bright in the Big Apple." So I mean, come on, Jose, like New York Apple, like it's fitting for the episode title. That's exactly why I did this. But Andrew Rick, I mean, what more can I say about his performance? It was huge. The save in the 66th minute where, like I said, he bailed out Nathan Harriel. Harriel has to do a better job clearing that ball away. He can't just wait for it to fall. He's got to just clear it straight away because when you're 1v1 against a impressive attacker that Alonso, I believe it was, who had the opportunity right there, you know, he made the Union pay once in this game. And so you've got to be quick on your feet. And yes, I know Nathan Harriel's not a natural center back, but still, sorry, it was Bokrar, the striker who had that chance saved by Andrew Rick. But again, as good as Nate is 1v1 defending, you gotta clear that ball away right away. You can't allow a dangerous play like that to happen. And Andrew Rick bailed him out. I mean, it's a palm save inside the goal, basically. I mean, right on the goal line. It's going in, and Andrew Rick somehow is able to backpedal back and just palm it out for a corner kick. And that play was so huge that the Union posted it that made number 2 on Sports Center this morning. That saved number 2 on Sports Center, 18-year-old Andrew Rick. So you get your first career win. You have your most saves in your career with 7, and you go number 2 on Sports Center because of that save. I mean, what a last 24 hours Andrew Rick has had. It's been unbelievable for him. I'm sure his phone's been blowing up from friends back home. You know, kids in the academy, kids that are playing away at college and whatnot. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people were singing Andrew Rick's praise for that performance last night. He had 6 saves in the second half. He wasn't really that busy in the first half, and once the Union went up 3-0 in the first half, you know, New York City were a little bit shell-shocked, and the Union almost had the perfect first half, and then New York City capitalized right before the end of the half with Martinez scoring, and Andrew Rick only had to make 1 save in the half, and then New York City came out firing. They were pretty upset. And Keaton Parks hit the post in the 62nd minute. Should have made it 3-2 there. And I was screaming at the TV and sending texts to people. I'm like, dude, Jim Curtin's got to make a substitution now. He's got to make a substitution. The Union are getting overran, and I believe it was Jose who's like, yeah, you got to bring in Sam and around. I'm like, yeah, bring in Jesus Bueno while you're at it. Heck, I wouldn't even mind seeing Chris Donovan. It's like, let's get physical players out here. Let's make this a physical game. Let's get fresh legs out here, people that are going to kill off the game. And it was just chance after chance after chance for New York City. And Andrew Rick stood the test. He stood on his head all game long in the second half, and no bigger save than that one in the 66th minute. You had Maxi Morales. He hits the crossbar in the 76th minute. 26 shots for New York City. 9 of those were on target. And it's a little bit like the New York Red Bulls game where the Union get a little bit fortunate that, yes, just like the Red Bulls, New York City hit the post and crossbar. And the Union, and Jim Curtin's talked about, haven't been that lucky, that fortunate at times this season. And it seems like so far in the second half, yeah, there's been a lot of luck going the Union's way. Look, even against Inter Miami last week, they had luck. Busquets does not make mistakes. You couldn't capitalize on that chance. You had 2 huge blunders by Tomas Aviles. You couldn't capitalize on those mistakes. Well, you did one. But a lot of mistakes last night by New York City, and the Union do actually capitalize on them, which we can get to here in a bit. But overall, yeah, the Union were fortunate because of missed opportunities, missed plays by New York City. But at the same time, too, Andrew Rick is the reason why the Union got all 3 points with those just crucial saves in the second half of the game. Speaking about crucial plays in the match, you had Jakob Glesnes with a goal off of a header, off of a corner kick to put the game at 4-1. And Jim Curtin talked about after the game how, sometimes the best defense is offense. And him and his coaching staff were sitting there on the sideline talking about, okay, how do we see this game out? And then Jakob Glesnes scores to make it 4-1, and Jim's like, actually, this is the best way to see games out, just continuing to score. And so this is what Jim Curtin had to say last night on Jacob's header and just seeing out the rest of the game.
On this field, if you leave things to chance, you see how quickly, 2 passes and you're already in the box. So it's dangerous. There's no safe lead here. That's why even at 3, at 3-1, the game was never safe, because they had a couple chances too. Rick made some saves. They hit the post. The best defense on this field, though, Jonathan, is to score again. So when Jakob, we were talking about defensive tactics and how do we close this out and make it ugly, because at that time New York had so many attacking players on the field. Jakob happened to score a header right off of that, and I said, we joked on the bench, said that.
Your guys' comments isn't really working. Playing clips, for some reason it cut off the rest of that clip. So you guys get the gist of it. I mean, the important part right there. And I told you guys, Jim Curtin's talking about on the bench with his staff that, look, we were discussing how do we close out this game, and yeah, just continuing to score. That's the best offense. That's how you close out this game. And he started out saying, on this field, we all know they play on a baseball stadium. If you leave things to chance, you see how quickly 2 passes and you're already in the box. So it's dangerous. There's no safe lead here. That's why even at 3-1, the game was never safe, because they need a couple chances. Because they had a couple chances. Rick made some saves. They hit the post. The best defense on this field is to score again. And yeah, the Union wind up scoring another goal there after Jakob Glesnes with Jesus Bueno to make the score 5-1. But yeah, Jakob Glesnes had himself a really, really good match last night. He had the goal, and then he saved the goal as well. And yeah, that goal line clearance probably doesn't make the headlines. It probably doesn't mean much in terms of the score line, because if New York City would have scored that, then it would have been 4-2 and would have been less than 10 minutes left to go in the game. So all in all, it wasn't a huge play, but it's still a saving a goal, and the Union much rather would have conceded just one goal compared to conceding 2, because who knows what it would have done for New York City's confidence. Like we said, they had 26 shots on the night, 9 of them were on target. They were creating plenty of chances. The Union's defense was breaking, and if it wasn't for Andrew Rick, if it wasn't for the defensive performance by Jakob Glesnes, yeah, New York City probably would have had more goals on the night. And the rest of that clip, so you guys on YouTube aren't going to hear the rest of the clip, but the people that are going back to listening to this podcast, Jim Curtin talks about how it could have been really like an 8-4, 8-7 kind of game, just a really, really high scoring game. And he's absolutely right. If it wasn't for the great goalkeeping by Andrew Rick, the great defensive display by Jakob Glesnes, yeah, you could just see this game going end to end just because of how small that field is. And one thing I found really, really interesting, and I knew the Union were dominant against New York City since the 2021 Eastern Conference Final, the COVID game, but I didn't realize how dominant they really were. In the last 7 games since that COVID game, the Union are 6-1-0. Only one loss. And that loss came this season at Subaru Park. And yes, we all know the Union haven't been the greatest team at Subaru this season, which is pretty much unheard of over the last 5-6 seasons. But during these 7 games against New York City, the Union have scored 18 goals and they've conceded 7 during the stretch. The Union have also won their last 3 away matches against New York City. Union haven't lost away to New York City since June of 2019. 3-1-1 in the last 4 games away, and during that stretch, they've scored 11 goals, conceded 3 against the New York City away. And so, I mean, this team, they found it in them where they something lit a fire under them, and I don't think it took much to light a fire when your team's missing 11 players. I think it was were missing because of COVID, and that's a game that, not to go on a tangent, but we're definitely going to go on a tangent. That game against New York City is a game that I'll probably never forget because I wasn't in the press box for that game. That's one of the last few games where I actually sat in my season ticket seats in the River End. But before that game even started, the fans knew it was going to take everything they had to back those players because you had so many players missing. You had a makeshift back line. You had Aurelian Collin pairing with Stuart Finley. I believe you had Nathan Harriel in that game playing as a left back, and then you had Olivier Bizer as a right back. I'm trying to pull it up here right now. And everybody knew what was at stake in that game. Everybody knew that, look, if the Union have any chance in this game against New York City, we're going to have to be the reason that these guys believe. I'm looking at the lineup. It's right here. Matt Freese in goal, Nathan Harriel left back, Stuart Finley and Aurelian Collin, your 2 center backs, Olivier Bizer is your right back. You played 3 in the midfield with Leon Flock, Jose Martinez, Jack McGlynn, and then you went with your 3 in Montero, Gazlag, and Shabilko. The Union scored the first goal. It's an own goal by Collins. And then Maxim Morales scores 2 minutes later. Bad defending by Olivier Bizo. And then in the 88th minute, Talis Magno takes advantage again of a mistake by Olivier Bizo. And that's all she wrote. But looking at the bench, the Union didn't have any great players on the bench. Jesus Bueno, young, unproven at this point. Anthony Fontana was really the only player that you trusted on the bench. Paxton Aronson, young and unproven. Anton Sorensen, Brandon Craig, Cole Turner, and Greg Ranjensing, who was your backup goalkeeper on the day. But yeah, I mean, Daniel Gazlag definitely wasn't what Daniel Gazlag is now. Jose Martinez wasn't what Jose Martinez is now. Jack McGlynn is definitely not what he was now. Nathan Harriel actually had a really good game. I believe he hit the post with a header in that, or just missed with a header. But you had a lot of young and unproven players in that game. And so you had fans knowing exactly what that game took. And Vince chimes in here talking about the COVID game. The fact that the only game New York City won since Donnie Moore Bucks gave them their MLS Cup was the rainy day Riquinho game in soccer karma. Yeah, absolutely. But it was just a special day because of how much the fans knew that we got to back these guys. And that's one of the loudest atmospheres I've ever heard from Union fans from before the game when the players aren't even out there yet. They're getting loud, they're getting rowdy, and they're backing the players when they're coming out for warm-ups. They're backing the players when they're in warm-ups, and then before that whistle's blown, from before the game to the end of the game, the fans were loud and they were proud. And yes, a lot of upset players after that final whistle was blown, but all the fans stayed. The river end stayed packed, cheering and applauding the effort that they saw. There's no reason why a young and unproven team should have been in that game against New York City, but that team's pissed off. And yes, it's a little bit of selfishness from those players that went out and partied and got COVID and then spread it amongst the team. And it was very fortunate that the Union were able to even start a starting 11 and have players on the bench. And they gave it their all. But from that moment on, the Union said, yeah, no, we're going to take things personal. And we saw it in the 2022 playoffs against New York City, a rematch of the Eastern Conference. Julian Crown's a big game that match. Jakob Glesnes had a big match, and the Union wound up winning 3-1 and going to MLS Cup. Fantastic performance by the Union against New York City. And these games are always hard physical soccer games, and it's what I appreciate every time these two teams get. And even the Riquinho game I thought was a pretty entertaining game back in June, I want to say it was. Yeah, it sucks that the Union lost that game, but these games you don't really get 5-1 blowouts. Maybe earlier you did when New York City were first introduced to the league, which I think is maybe a little bit why Union fans are surprised why the Union have been so successful here the last 7 games. 6-1-0. Yeah, 2-1. Carranza scores right at the start of the second half against New York City in May of this year when they lose. But yeah, this is a team that's had New York City's number, and it's all started after that COVID game. They've taken things personal, and New York City just seemed not to have an answer. Another comment here on YouTube. Again, people that are just joining YouTube, I have no clue what's going on with the stream. Everything's so delayed. Congrats to Philly to bounce back from the Miami game. Yeah, absolutely. They take advantage of their chances, and I guess that's where we're transition into next. Union had 12 shots on the night. 7 of them were on target. The Union scored 5 goals, which means that 71.4% of their shots on target resulted in a goal. That's as clinical as it comes. Yes, the Union didn't create as many chances against New York as they did against Inter Miami last week, but the chances that they did create, that they did take advantage of, yes, mistakes by New York City in this game, but yes, the Union, when they were taking their shots, a lot of them were on target, and they were winding up in the back of the net. Those 2 mistakes proved costly by New York, and the Union punished them. Thiago Martins, he mistraps the ball. Todd collects the loose ball, finds Mikhail Uwer wide open on the left, who finishes with a first-time shot. Before that, you rewind the play, and you guys can see this in the goals breakdown video, which will come out sometime later tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. Definitely slacking on that. Sorry, I have 2 more videos to record on that, and then the goals breakdown video will be out. But you had a giveaway by New York City on the left-hand side. They tried switching it from the left to the right. It's a ball that gets collected by Kai Wagner, and Kai Wagner, as soon as he collects the ball, he's looking to play forward. He does play forward. And as soon as the front 3 of the Union and Baribo, Gazdag, and Uwa see that Kai Wagner has this ball, they're all darting for it. It's all 1v1 defending that New York City has to do now. And it's just how this team's built to play is always go forward, not play from the back, just long ball, play very direct. They win the ball back in the midfield, let's play direct. And it's a huge mistake by a staple of that New York City defense. And the Union take advantage of it. And then when you look on the Gazdag goal, it's poor tracking by James Sands and Keaton Parks on McGlynn and Gazdag. Great first-time cross by Jack McGlynn into Baribo. And I thought, actually, Jack McGlynn had a really solid game. When I do my 3 stars on the night, he was right there on the cusp of being the 3rd best player, in my opinion. Really stepped it up from the Miami game, created a lot of chances, a player that got in a lot of dangerous areas. And that's what you want to see from Jakob Glesnes. That's what I wanted to see against Inter Miami. It didn't happen, and Jim Curtin and his coaching staff realized it and took him off where, okay, we're still in this game, and try to get somebody else to create things for us. And Jakob Glesnes gets another start and improves. Hey, look, that game was a one-off and provides to be much better against New York City. But then you have that cross by McGlynn into Baribo. Baribo wins the header, and then Matt Freese, he spills the ball, and Daniel Goslick's there to tap it in. Yes, mistakes happen in games, and Jim Curtin talks about, I've said this already in the podcast, where Union weren't fortunate, they weren't lucky early on in the season, and now it seems like these last 3 games, the Union have had nothing but luck. And minus the Miami game, they've taken advantage of mistakes. And so you hope that the Union can just continue to convert their chances. Mikael Uhre, that's now 3 goals in his last 3 games. And I said after the New York Red Bulls game that Mikael would score 5 goals in his last 7 games. I thought that was possible. Well, now he just needs 3 goals in his last 5 games, because after the Red Bulls game, he scored in Miami, and now he scored against New York City. He's in terrific form. Ty Baribo gets on the goal sheet tonight, or last night. 15 goals in his last 17 games in all competitions. Fantastic form. Daniel Gosling gets on the score sheet. First time that this front 3 has scored in the same game, which isn't surprising with Ty Baribo not really playing a lot of games in the past. But I think this front 3 can work and will work. And you want to see these guys clicking right now. You want to see them not be at their max. Yes, they're going to make mistakes. You want to see them be at their max come playoff time. But the more these guys play together, the more they build chemistry, and the more this front 3 is going to be for teams to handle, just like it was when Julian Kranza was involved. And so you hope that the Union can continue to ride the hot hand of the front 3. You hope that Andre Blake can get back, and, who knows what happens in the playoffs. As things stand, the Union are the 9th seed, and I do believe that they could catch Toronto for the 8th seed. I think, that's very doable for the Union. Toronto, as things stand, in 8th place. You played 1 less game than them. They're at 36 points. So, yeah, you can absolutely catch Toronto. You have Charlotte in 7th place on 38 points. You're only 5 points behind them. I think, yes, you need Charlotte to drop some points, and you got to obviously keep winning. But Charlotte could be catchable in 7th place right there. And then New York City in 6th place on 40 points. You're 7 points behind them. You won the game that mattered against them. Now you need things to go your way against them. 6 will probably be difficult for this team to catch. I don't expect New York City to have more games like they had last night against the Union in the future. I think that was a one-off, and I don't expect Matt Freese to concede 5 goals anymore this season, nor do I expect this New York City defense to concede that many goals. But yes, the Union's front 3 in terrific form. Ty Baribo continues to show why the Union bought him in the first place, and he's taking advantage of every single opportunity given to him. Whatever you create for him, it seems like he's putting it in the back of the net. He's always involved in the build-up. 1 goal, 1 assist on the night. And Mikael Uhre, I said it last night on the Across the Pitch podcast with Mike Barrera and Jose Nunez. I said that Mikael's never scored in 3 straight games before in his career. He's never done that with the Union. That's a lie. My apologies. He did it in 2022. Thank you, Kyle Albany, for bringing this up. He did it against Atlanta, New York Red Bulls, and Orlando City. And so now he's done that back 2 times now in his Union career. And we'll see if he can make it 4 against DC United. DC United's a team that he's had success against in the past, and I do expect a big game from Mikael against DC on Sunday. The last topic I want to talk about before we get into 3 stars and end this show is the Union just being one of the best road teams in the last 3 seasons. And I opened the podcast talking about this, where how surprising is it to you guys? Would you guys be surprised if I told you in the last 3 years, from 2022 to 2024, this current season, that the Union are a top 5 road team in MLS? Number 1, you have FC Cincinnati, who are 23, 10, and 15. Orlando City at 20, 15, and 13. Minnesota United 18, 25, and 5. LAFC 17, 18, and 12. Philadelphia Union 17, 18, and 14. If you want to look at their points per game, FC Cincinnati has 1.75, Orlando City 1.52, Minnesota United 1.22, LAFC 1.34, and Philadelphia Union 1.32. But the Union are almost 500 in the last 3 seasons on the road. They still have 2 more road games to play against Orlando City and against Columbus Crew. Both difficult games, but the good thing is you're 500, 5-5-5 this year on the road. I believe the Union are +1 in the win column in all competitions on the road this season. I did not prepare for that in this episode, but yeah, in terms of MLS, the Union, 5th most, tied for the 4th most wins in the last 3 seasons in MLS, 17, tied with LAFC. They've been a really, really good team on the road, and which is a little bit unexpected when you look at the history of this team. And it seems like the last few seasons, and you go back to 2019, 2020, and 2021 too, the Union were good road teams back then too, and they've been consistent on the road. And I think we all know that the Union are going to play majority of the games on the road in the playoffs, as things stand, which isn't a bad thing when you look at how they played at home this season. This team makes me more confident on the road than they do at home, and I would encourage all fans, yes, there's only 2 games left, try to make it out to one of those, either Orlando City, a little bit harder on a Wednesday, or Columbus Crew on a Saturday. I'm going out for that game. Away games are so fun, and especially when you look at the Union, I mean, 17 wins, they have 14 draws. Like, the odds are you're going to see a win or a draw more than a loss. So it's like, why not go out there? You have a higher chance of seeing a win or a draw than a loss on the road for the Union just because of how well they played. This team does not disappoint. And if you look at the top 5 scoring teams on the road in MLS in the last 3 seasons, it's Philadelphia Union at 79 goals, Columbus Crew at 79 goals, FC Cincinnati at 77 goals, Minnesota United at 68, and LA Galaxy at 65. Last night's 5 goals scored against New York City was the second most that the Union have scored on the road in the last 3 seasons. DC United in 2022 in a 6-0 win. New York City last night, 5-1 win. FC Cincinnati this year, 4-3 loss. Chicago Fire this year, a 4-3 loss. Portland Timbers this year, 3-1 win. And there's been multiple games, too, the last couple of years where the Union have scored 3 goals on the road. But when you're scoring 3 goals on the road, you should win. And that's what makes the Chicago Fire game so frustrating. You were up by 2 goals on that game. FC Cincinnati, yes, they score first, you score. It was a lot of back and forth. You never had the lead in that game. You always tied it up. So I appreciate the fight from this team. And that's exactly what you get. Every single road game is a fight from this team. The last 3 road games for the Union, they've scored first. How many times has Jim Curtin said we're a team that's built to play from the front, not from behind? And when the Union score first, then teams can start pushing more players forward, and the Union can take advantage of those opportunities. And so, yeah, to see 5 goals against New York City, I'm shocked. Union now have 32 goals on the road, which is the most in the league. And in the last 3 seasons, only one team scored more, which was CF Montreal back in 2022. They scored 32 goals. And so the Union are tied with Montreal now at 32 goals. And they still have, like I said, Orlando City and Columbus Crew to have the most goals scored in a season on the road in the last 3 years. And I do believe the Union can get there. And this team is just so fun to watch on the road. And I think they always have a fighting chance. Another comment that, again, stream just so delayed. I have no clue why, and I'll be curious to see when I listen back. Hopefully everything sounds good, but Philly just needs to get into the playoffs. The postseason won't matter at that point. Yeah, exactly. Once you get into the playoffs, everything's up for grabs. You rarely see, and I know you're an Inter Miami fan, you rarely see the number 1 seed play the number 1 seed in the opposite conference. Yeah, we saw it with LAFC and the Philadelphia Union in 2022, but that rarely happens in the league when you get the 2 best teams. I do think Inter Miami has a chance. When you have a Messi, when you have a Suarez, of course you're obviously going to have a chance, and I'll be curious to see how this team turns it on come playoff time. And it really doesn't matter what Miami does from here on out. Yes, they want to win the the Supporters Shield, but I think Miami pretty much has that wrapped up, and they'll win the Supporters Shield with ease. But playoff time, yeah, I'll be curious to see how does Messi do in the playoffs? How does Suarez do in the playoffs? And yeah, the playoffs should be nothing to those guys when you look at the huge games they played in their career. I mean, look, Messi's played in 2 World Cup finals, didn't face him, wins one, came close to winning a second one or the first one against Germany, and then wins the second time that he was in a final against France. So, yeah, I mean, the playoffs is going to be nothing to this guy. Champions League finals, playoffs are nothing, but yeah, it will be interesting to see how Inter Miami reacts, where all the pressure, all the talk's on them. What are they going to do come playoff time? And yeah, look, the pressure won't be on the Union being one of the lower seeds if they do get into the playoffs. Yes, right now they're the final seed, the 9 seed. They'd have to play the playing game against the 8th seed, which currently is Toronto. But anything happens in the playoffs. Your point, absolutely correct. And playoffs are going to be here before we know it. It's insane when you think about it. And so, yes, fully expecting the Union to play majority of those games on the road, but I have all the confidence in the world that the Union can definitely pull off some upsets this playoffs. I'm not saying the Union are going to win MLS Cup. I'm not totally convinced that the Union will finish the season in a playoff spot, especially if Andre Blake continues to miss time. But if you get Andre Blake back, this front three stays hot. Danley John Jock comes back healthy. Yeah, I do feel pretty confident. I'm not saying they're going to win MLS Cup. I don't have that same confidence that I had in 2022, but I do think Cincinnati is beatable. I do think Columbus is beatable. Is Inter Miami beatable? Sure, but can you expect them to have as many mistakes as they had, like they did against the Union last week? No, absolutely not. But playoff soccer is crazy, so you never know what's going to happen. So yeah, it's what I wanted to bring to your guys' attention. The Union's road form the last 3 seasons. One of the best teams in the league, highest scoring team, tied with Columbus at 79 goals. So before we wrap up the show, 3 stars on the night. Number 3, Ty Baribo, 1 goal, 1 assist. Work rate, unbelievable. We've talked about that so many episodes here in the past. Don't have to explain myself. Don't have to explain his game anymore. You guys all see his game. You guys all know what Todd Baribo brings to this team. Number 2, Jakob Glesnes, 1 goal, 1 goal line clearance, 1 out of 2 tackles, 1, 4 blocks, 1 interception, 8 clearances, 3 out of 3 ground duels, 1. Fantastic performance by Jakob Glesnes. Probably would have won man of the match for me if it wasn't for Andrew Rick's 7 saves on the night. Won this game for the Philadelphia Union with all those saves in the second half. Fantastic performance by the 18-year-old goalkeeper. Another comment. Agreed. No guarantees to win MLS Cup for anyone, no matter their place in the league. Exactly. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcasts of The Free Kick. Make sure you check out the YouTube channel. We're live all the time. Yes, I'd be lying if I said we don't normally have these mistakes. The stream had been good the last couple of streams, but for whatever reason, it seems like it's delayed pulling up comments when I was trying to hide myself behind when I was playing Jim Curtin's comments after the game. Yeah, everything just seems so delayed, and you guys on YouTube didn't even get to hear the full response from Jim Curtin on his second answer in terms of making the offense your defense. So you guys have to go back and listen to this whole podcast in your podcast feed. And if you guys want to check out all the information in one place, check out thefreekick.substack.com, where I post the goals breakdown videos, where I post some articles, which my apologies, haven't wrote an article in a while. Definitely have to get on that. And then you guys can also listen to the podcast there in full if you so choose. But everybody that is commented tonight, Elmer, Vince, Kyle, Jose, I appreciate you guys. John also commenting at the beginning of the show. Yeah, you guys are what makes this show. And we're not at the Better Terrans level yet where we get 20 plus comments a show, but we will get there one day with you guys spreading the word, with me figuring out how to spread the word better than I am 20 minutes before the show. We're telling you guys, yeah, we're going to go live 9 p.m., between 9 p.m. 9:30 the day after games, which I know you guys need a consistent time. But that does bring me to the last thing I want to remind you guys of. I'm going on vacation on Saturday. I'll be Saturday to Saturday, flying back in. So I'll be able to go to the Atlanta United game. I do plan on doing a podcast while on vacation. I do plan on doing the goals breakdown video, and I want to try to write an article for you guys, but I have no idea when exactly I'll do that. Like I said, the Wi-Fi where I stay on vacation is pretty bad at the house, so I don't know what that's going to be like for streaming. So we might not stream that episode, but we'll definitely get a podcast episode at some time next week talking about the DC United game. Hopefully the Union get all 3 points. They need all 3 points against DC United. I would love to see a Mikal Uwa hat trick. Do I think he has that in him? Absolutely. I'll say right now, I think Mikal Uwa scores a brace against DC United. I'll throw a prediction out there. I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to do it anyway. I see the Union beating DC United by a score of 4-1, which is crazy because of how inconsistent the Union have been at home this year. But they're finding the form. They've been in great form here the last 5 games in MLS, and I think that continues this Sunday at home. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.